So what we said last time was that our goal in relationships, for a real amazing relationship, is not to have a partnership. That's not enough. Partnership is when you have two separate people working together and complementing each other's areas that they're lacking. The point of the relationship is to become one, to have one unit, to develop a certain entity that we are now. There's no difference. My left arm, my right arm, we're one body. We're working everything all together. So we mentioned last time that the way to accomplish that is through three steps of sharing. Sharing my life, sharing my emotions, sharing my experiences, showing the other person that they're a partner in my success. And the third was allowing the other person to share. Okay. And now I'd like to move on to another area, which a lot of people struggle with, and that is growing together with the person. The person you're having a relationship, if you have an experience and you're going to grow, you're going to change, whether it's religiously, whether it's just practically, whether it's a certain value that you want to bring into your home. And the other person in my relationship didn't have that experience, right? It could be a multiple of reasons why this occurs. Let's say I'm at work and I see that someone in my office was trying to be a little bit sneaky, not fully honest, and trying to get something and to be successful in that fashion. And then he gets caught. He gets nailed and he gets in a lot of trouble. So I learned from there, a very important lesson. I learned from there that it's not worth it. It's not worth to cut corners here and cut corners over there, even if it's okay, because at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to be successful. And therefore, I want to decide that I'm going to be squeaky clean no matter what. Now, I'm in a relationship with another person, and that person didn't experience what I experienced. So if I all of a sudden am going to change my behavior based on that experience that I had, and my spouse or whoever I am in my relationship will not change with me, so then all of a sudden that unit that we're trying to create becomes deformed. Right? Imagine if one person's right leg grows to 5 feet tall and the other leg doesn't. So you're lopsided, right? It doesn't work. It can't be that one person is growing one way and the other person is not growing together with that individual. It could be religiously. It could be that I have some inspiration from a class or from some kumsitz or from some Shabbat meal or whatever it is. Now I'm all excited about that. And I want my Shabbat meal to be that way. Or I want to raise my children that way. And then all of a sudden my spouse doesn't want that or doesn't understand that, or doesn't appreciate that. It's very important that we are able to grow together. Now, it doesn't mean that all the classes, like we spoke about last time, right, that we spoke about working together. It doesn't mean you have to go to all your classes together and all the experiences happen together. That's impossible. You're going to have experiences that your spouse is not, or your boyfriend or girlfriend is not going to have that. So how do you go ahead and allow people to grow together? Okay. Now, two important side points before we move forward. And that is that even if someone is not moving together with you and they're not growing together with you, that doesn't mean that we're in problem land and it's emergency, SOS. Change requires a lot of time. And therefore, if you're the one undergoing change, it's very important to have a lot of patience. Again, the end goal is that we're going to grow together, but it requires time. Just because you had that inspiration does not mean that whatever tactics we're going to speak about today, your spouse or whoever you are in your relationship is going to be able to move at that direction as well. So it takes time. Unfortunately, as one person experiences something new and one person grows and changes, they very quickly are unable to tolerate the other person, right? If I all of a sudden develop a value to speak a certain way, I want to have a refined speech. I don't want to badmouth other people anymore. I don't want to use certain words anymore. I'm trying to be careful with my speech. And all of a sudden, that person I'm in a relationship with goes ahead and uses a word that they shouldn't be using. Like, oh, how could you do that? How dare you? And start like, you don't remember the 5 minutes ago you're using that exact same word. Very nice right now. You're growing. You're on the up. But all of a sudden, when we're growing, it's very easy not to be able to tolerate the other person. And that's a big no-no. You have to be careful. You have to remember that in growth, every person takes a different amount of time, have their own challenges that they need to work through. And therefore, even if you're excited about something, you have to be patient with other people, love them and care about them and give to them, even if they're not necessarily changing with you right now. Again, the ultimate goal is we're going to get there. But even if he's not moving with you right now, you have to go ahead and let it develop. Okay. Here we go. We're going to talk about some tactics in order to try to help people grow together. Number one, the Gemara talks about the following story. There was a rabbi, his name was Rav Yanai. And Rav Yanai had a tree in his backyard that he had forever. And the tree in his backyard was hanging over into the thoroughfare, into the regular main street where people walk by with their wagons, with their cars, whatever it is. The tree hung over. Okay? No one said a word to him. It's been like that forever. All of a sudden, one day, there's a knock on the door. A guy comes in and he says as follows, Rabbi Yana, I have a problem. Yes, what's your problem? Well, I have a tree in my backyard that hangs over into the public thoroughfare. And the people came to my house and they came to complain. And they said they don't like it. When they want to walk through the street, they want to be able to look up into the sky and see the stars. They don't like the trees fall into their stuff. They want the open skies. And they want me to cut down my tree. Am I obligated to cut down my tree or not? So Rabbi Yanai said, come back tomorrow and I'll give you an answer. Okay? The guy leaves. Rabbi Yanai calls over his servant and says, look, you know that tree in my backyard? Go cut it down fast. Go quickly cut that thing down. The guy cuts it down. The next day, that person who came to ask the question comes back to the rabbi. Rabbi Yanai, I'm here again. I'd like to know, do I have to cut down my tree? And Rabbi Yanai says, yes. You have to go ahead and cut down your tree. So the man says, but Rabbi Yanai, you have a tree also in your backyard that hangs over the main street. So Rabbi Yanai said, look, if I have a tree in my backyard, then you don't have to cut it down. But if I don't, then you have to go ahead and cut it down. And the Gemara asks the following question. Why did Rabbi Yanai have to go ahead and do this whole thing? Right? Push it off a whole day, get his tree cut down first. Why don't you just say to the guy, look, buddy, you got to cut it down. Jewish law says you can't interfere with the public thoroughfare. You got to cut it down. And I'm going to go cut mine down also. So the Gemara answers as follows. This is one of the biggest concepts that we have to internalize in any relationship that we have, whether it's with our spouse, whether it's with friends, family members, parents, children, all over the place. The Gemara says as follows, that first you have to decorate yourself, and then you could go ahead and decorate others. Meaning, the only way that you could ever create change, the only way that you could steer other people in a different direction is if you act as a leader. You go ahead and do it yourself first. If you're not doing it yourself, no one is ever going to follow you. You could talk a big show. You could say all the right things in a super passionate and exciting way. But if you don't act based on those speeches and those beliefs that you're speaking out, there's no way that any change will ever occur. And therefore, Rabbi Yanai first had to go ahead and cut down his tree, had to be finished with no tree. And only then was he capable of going ahead and telling the man asking the question that he also should cut down his tree. Can't say, well, do it together. It doesn't work. You got to do it first. It's like I always tell people, usually when it comes to parenting, you could talk to your kids and tell them, look, it's really important to wake up early in the morning. I'll prove it to you. All the famous CEOs, the top CEOs, it's clear. You could Google it. They all wake up 5 o'clock in the morning. They don't answer their emails right away. They start right away figuring out what their goals of the day are. They go ahead and map out all of their challenges and how they're going to take about it. And then, only then, they start to do their other work. They start to resurface. So, son, you got to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning also. That's the only way you're going to be successful. Now, he's correct. The father is correct when he goes ahead and says this. But then the kid goes ahead and he turns around and he says to his father, he says, yeah, but Dad, you wake up 9:30, 10 o'clock all the time. You're always rolling to bed late. Oh, son, you don't understand. That's because I work till 2:30 in the morning. I'm up till super late. I'm very busy with this and busy with that. But you're going to sleep at 9 o'clock. So I'm telling you, you got to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. Doesn't work. It doesn't work. Even though it makes tons of sense and it's correct intellectually, that's not the way that anyone could ever create change. The only way to create change, step one, is leading by example. And the second anyone sees in your relationship that you're trying to create change, even if you're not perfect yet, you're not there. Okay, you're not perfect in your speech yet. You're not perfect in the way that you want to learn Torah or spend your Shabbat or go ahead and introduce certain values. You're not there yet, but it's clear that you're speaking in a very different way. It's very clear that the friends that you're hanging around with are different. Again, you're not perfect yet, but it's very clear that you're working that example. Only then will those very passionate ideas and sharing of information, etc., be effective and help other people in your family. Okay? So the first step is to lead by example. And again, like I said, you don't have to be perfect yet. If you want to bring in this value of perfect speech, you don't have to be there yet. But it has to be clear to everyone they've already taken steps in order for your speech to be perfect. Yes, question in the back.
Are we allowed to ask questions now, or should we save them for the end?
No, now it's perfect stopping spot.
All right. So I don't know. I hear what you're saying, but I still think no matter how you do it, you end up coming out sounding self-righteous. Like, how do you deliver the message that, okay, I'm there already. I've done it. I've changed the way I speak. I'm speaking so much. Like, how do you get to the next sentence? Like, what's the next sentence? So, new, what? When are you going to change? Like, how do you do that?
Okay, so I'll give you, that's a good question. Before I get to step two, which is, I think if you're related to this, let me just address that for a moment. Okay? I don't believe that you have to ever say, and now it's for you to do it. For example, let's say I come home, and we spoke about last time about sharing, right? So I come home, and I say at the Shabbos table, that's a good time when I try to bring in ideas, right? I just come home and I say, oh, it's amazing. I read this thing about the people that wake up early, they're exponentially more successful than other people that wake up late. And I say, you know what? I'm just so blown away by that. I'm starting to set my alarm an hour earlier than usual. That's it. I didn't say a word to anyone. I didn't tell anyone that I'd like them to wake up. I did not mention to my son that really it is all about him because he wakes up every day 2 o'clock in the afternoon, right? Nothing, no mention of anyone else except for myself. I speak about a value and I say that I'm going to start doing it. And then I actually start doing it. And then the next week or 2 weeks later, I come back and I say, I'm telling you, it's unbelievable. Since I started waking up earlier, I'm getting so much more done. I'm so much happier. I'm so much more energized. I'm being so much more successful. And it's slow. Again, change, and this is the most important thing. I mentioned this before. I'm going to repeat it 100 more times. Takes a long time. But the second people need immediate results, they go into criticism mode. And they need to, you got to change. And look, I did it. Now you can do it too. And oh yeah, we're going to make it in a nice way. I'm going to say, those don't work. And hopefully the next time we'll speak about criticism and why it doesn't work and how it could be so damaging. There's almost no reason. The first step of influence is you don't have to say anything to the other person. You don't have to mention that it's about them. You don't have to mention that you're addressing them. Just talk about the value. I had a kid. Well, I remember this a very, very long time ago. She was very little. She used to tell us like the weird, wildest stuff, like things that would happen to her. It was clear that none of that was true. So first, someone gave me a whole speech about children. When they tell you these things, in their world, it is true. They're not liars. I thought they were lying. No, it's not liars. In their world of imagination, this really happened. It's not lying. It's about imagination. Okay, so I accepted that. I didn't know what a 5-year-old thinks is true and not true. I learned that. And then all I did was start telling stories on Shabbos about truth. That was it. And week after week after week, I just kept on saying more and more and more stories. And after a while, I actually started seeing a change in the way my child started to speak. It doesn't have to be addressed to a single person. I'm going to speak about it in a minute. That actually, when you address it to a person or the person who realizes that you're attacking them, usually puts up a defensive wall and doesn't allow anyone to change at all. Okay? So first, you're introducing the value. It could be about yourself, but the key, step one, is that you have to actually bring out that value and show that you're doing it. If you're not showing that you're doing it, there's no chance that anyone is ever going to follow no matter what. Okay? Was that answer the question?
It does.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Here we go. Step number 2. This is much more difficult. The Gemara tells a story of back in the day, right here across the street at the Kotel, in the Beis HaMikdash. They used to interview witnesses. Anytime witnesses would come to tell us, they didn't use calendars back in the day. They used to see the moon, and if there was a new moon, they'd come and testify that the new month began. They saw the moon, the new moon. So they would actually question the witnesses to make sure that no one was lying. Okay, so the Gemara goes through all the different questions that they would ask the witnesses to make sure that they really saw the new moon and it was a time for a new month. So the Gemara says, if the witnesses ever said that the concave part of the moon is the black part of the moon, the part that you don't see. Well, okay, the concave part of the moon is the moon that you do see, but it's the white sliver around. So if they would ever say that the black part of the moon was facing the sun, so for example, let's say you had the sun over here, okay, and you had the sliver of the moon over here. Okay, this part is black, okay? So here's the sun, and here's the concave part of the moon. The Gemara says you know that they're lying. How do you know that they're lying? Because now you and I know how to lie. You know, none of us know any astrology. I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't know astrology. Okay. The reason I know they're lying is because the sun is what gives light to the moon. The moon is a reflection of the sun. So that little white piece, right? This white piece over here of the moon that we see, that sliver, right, is only because it's a reflection of the sun over here. Here's the sun, and the sun reflects off the light. So the sun can't be here. If the sun was here, this part of the moon wouldn't be black, it would be white, right? The white part of the moon has to be on the side of the sun. That's obvious. Now, in the times of Gemara, we should realize they knew astrology very, very, very well. There are books that were written about the details of the angles of the sun and the moon down to the wire. They really, really knew their stuff. So that's what I would have expected the Gemara to tell me why we know they're lying. Because it's impossible that the sun is here and the black part of the moon is over here. That's impossible. But the Gemara doesn't say that. The Gemara says, you know why they're lying? Because la'olam, forever. Lo ra'asa chama, the sun never saw pigimata shalavana, the pigima, the lacking part of the moon, because then the moon would be embarrassed. Now, just to appreciate, the word pigima is not a nice word. Okay, when you want to say something's lacking, you say chaser. Ani chaser kesef. I am lacking money. Pigima is like a deficiency. So the Gemara says, you know why the sun can never be here and the moon would look like this, the white part over there and the black part over here on the side of the sun? Because the sun never saw the deficiency of the moon, maybe the moon would be embarrassed. That's what the Gemara says. And you're looking at the Gemara like, what? What a weird way to tell us basic information. The moon is a reflection of the sun, and therefore the sun has to be on the side of the white part of the moon. Simple. Why did the Gemara decide to use such a strange wording? So the Baal Shem Tov said as follows. Baal Shem Tov tells us that the rabbis in the Gemara, by using this specific wording, is coming to teach us the way to successfully influence another person. The sun represents that which is influencing. The moon represents that which is receiving the influence. Says the Gemara, you will never be able to influence anyone else, ever, if you see that person as deficient. If you see that that person is inherently missing something, you will never be able to influence them because it will embarrass them. And we'll get back to the embarrassing part in a minute. But what does that mean? So this is one of my pet peeves. Sorry for venting over here. Thank you for listening. Okay, I think that people who have ADHD are superhuman people. I think it's one of the greatest gifts that someone could have, and they're super, super duper successful. You got to learn how to use your weapon. That's it. People who say that he is ADHD, I think is a disgusting thing to say, and absolutely horrific. What do you mean he is ADHD? He has it. When you say someone is this, you're defining them as deficient. When you define someone as deficient, it's impossible to go ahead and help that person, and it's impossible for that person to ever change. If you have you're in a relationship with someone, and you lend them your car, and they go ahead and they smash it up, and you say he is a horrible driver, you're defining the person as a horrible. I mean, he is. That means his essence is. That's who he is. That's what the word is means. His essence is a horrible driver. Really? That's his essence? Or he needs good driving lessons, or he needs to learn how to drive. There's a fundamental difference between defining someone he is this versus he has this or he needs to work on this. There's a fundamental difference. Okay, it sounds easy, but unfortunately, sometimes in our regular way of speaking, where it's very common for us to say is. The Gemara is telling us that if you go ahead and you say, I'm trying to influence someone, I want to bring in that value, we'll use the same examples before of speech, of proper speech. If I believe that the people that I want to influence, my family members, whatever it is, they are people who have horrible speech. That's who they are. They're deficient. They're big mouths, right? You are a big mouth. You are a big mouth is defining the person. Who are they? They are a big mouth. Okay? They have a loose tongue. You are a loose tongue. That's it. You could shoot from everywhere and you'll never know what's going to come out of your mouth. That's defining the person. You will never. You could lead by example from today to tomorrow. You will never create the change. Instead, now this is a little bit hard, you have to look at the person as perfect. They're perfect. However, externally, there are certain behaviors or certain ways that he or she have become accustomed to, which need to be fixed here and there. And when you're able to look at that person in that fashion, then change and influence is able to occur. Now, I'd like to explain why that's true. Let's look at that second statement of the Gemara, that the moon will be embarrassed if the sun looks at the deficiency of the moon. There are two ways for influence to occur, for it to occur. One is that if I'm trying to influence someone with a certain value, they have to be able to trust me as someone that they want to learn from. They have to be able to put themselves into my hands to allow me to mold them. Now that's on all levels, at all levels, anyone. It could be friends, it could be roommates, anyone. We're always influencing people left and right. All of you in the same room over there, you're influencing each other, whether you like it or not. That's the way any relationship exists. We're always influencing each other. The only way you could ever learn from someone else, if you could say, I could hear this person. I could let them give me new ideas and shape my mind. But you'll never do that if you think the other person thinks you're deficient. No chance, buddy. You could talk from today to tomorrow. I'm gonna put up a wall. I don't want to hear anything you're saying. And if I do hear, it's one in one ear, out the other. The only way the person that's being influenced can actually listen and try to internalize those ideas is if they trust the person that's trying to influence them. But it's almost impossible for anyone to trust anyone if they think that that person feels that they're deficient. If they believe in them, it's a whole different story. But if they think they're deficient, it's not going to happen. That's step one. Step two is that for anyone to change, you need enormous amount of strength. Changing is not easy. We all have the ability to change. That's one of the goals of life, is to change and just become better and better and better. It never ends. But it's hard. We all know that. We all could think of something in our minds that we're trying to change through. It's not so easy. Today this, we do it. Tomorrow we don't do it, right? The only way we could actually think that we could do it is if we believe in ourselves. We're not going to believe in ourselves if someone already told me that I'm deficient. It's a horrible thing. I have one of my daughters. Thank God she's quite smart. And she once came home when she was in second grade. Now she's already in high school, finishing high school. So she came home in second grade with a report card. And the way they grade over here is she had like a check with a minus next to it. Okay? So they don't have A, B, C, D. Okay, there's a check, that's a good thing. With a minus means like it's a little less than a check. Okay. So I said to her, she's in second grade. I'm like, so a really, really nice report card. Her name's Ora. Light, her hair's red. She was born in Hanukkah. Okay. So Ora, I said, Ora, I said, that's not why we named her that. But okay, Ora, I said, what's the deal? What's the deal with the minus? Like what's going on? She said, but no, don't worry. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, look carefully. I look carefully. This is unbelievable. There's a winner of a move. The check was in pen and the minus was in pencil. And my daughter told me as follows. My teacher told me that really she knows that I'm really very good at this subject. She doesn't understand what happened, that I didn't do well on my test, but she knows that I'm really good. And therefore, in the next half of the year, this was in January when she came with this report card, in the next half of the year, if I do well on my test, she's going to erase the minus. Now, that was a teacher move that's deserving of winning an award. It's an amazing thing. Because when you put that minus on that report card, you're telling the kid, this is who you are. This is your definition. This is what your future is going to be like. But if you could put that minus in pencil, what are you saying? That's not real you are. Okay, you got a bad grade, this and that, so I have to give it to you. She didn't shy away from that. But I know who you are is someone much bigger than that and capable of much more. So I'm putting it in pencil, and if you do better, I'll take it off. If not, I'm going to leave it there, but I still don't believe that that's who you are. That's an amazing, amazing move. And we have to be careful in all of our relationships that if we ever want to influence anyone, that we truly believe in that person, that they could do anything. We see them as someone that's perfect. Yeah, they don't know how to drive, and maybe we'll think twice before we give them the car, but that doesn't change who they are. Doesn't change who they are. Yeah, sometimes they speak in a not nice way, but inside they're pure, they're a perfect person. They need to learn how to speak. They need to be educated in a better way. They need better friends. They need to realize it's not cool to speak that way, or that I'm not interested in hearing the bad speech about other people. But that's going to take time and maybe even conditioning. But that's not who they are in their essence. And just to maybe speak a little bit Kabbalistic for a moment, the Tomer Devora, Rav Moshe Cordovero, he was a big Kabbalist in Tzfat. He's buried actually in Tzfat. So he has a book called the Tomer Devora, which is heavy Kabbalah. I've never learned it, except for the first part. Okay, the first part is more common, it's not as deep. He writes over there as follows. He says that this idea of seeing someone's essence as perfect is the way that God has a relationship with the Jewish people. We make mistakes all the time. We sin. We've done bad stuff over our lifetime. Just look at every parsha, right? We accepted the Torah in yesterday's parsha, and then all of a sudden we sin with the golden calf, and we went like hot. We're like yo-yos, like bad stuff. And God could have said, "Enough with you guys, like finished." But Hashem sees us as a perfect entity, and in Shir HaShirim, the Song of Songs, which is a love song between the Jewish people and God, the Jewish people say, "Shechora ani." I am darkened. I am burnt. My skin is burnt. V'nava, but I'm beautiful. Sheshisafatni hashemesh, because really I'm just sunburnt. What does that mean? It means that really my skin is beautiful. Oh, my skin doesn't look beautiful? That's because I got a sunburn. That's not who I am. When the sunburn goes away, I'm going to be beautiful again. And he says that's exactly the way it works with our relationship. Yeah, we're a perfect soul. Our neshama is pure. Our neshama, our soul never gets tainted. It always stays perfect. All of our mistakes that we do are external. It's based on our physical body, layers that we put on top of ourselves. But internally, our essence is pure. And God sees us that way. And therefore, it's much easier to go ahead and look at people and believe in them. And that, he writes, that's the same way we have to treat our fellow man. We have to look, just like God looks at us as perfect people, we have to look at each other as perfect people. Again, this is not easy. I know I'm speaking a little bit high, but I think it's important for us to appreciate this idea. It's true that it's hard for us to see it, but we have to look at people as perfect. He made mistakes. He did this wrong. She did that. She did this. But in their essence, they have the ability to change. When we are able to do that, so then we are able to invest. We're able to give over. We're able to hope and believe in the people that we want to try to influence. Now, this is very, very important when we're going to start to bridge to a topic that hopefully next time we'll speak about, and that is criticism. What does happen when someone does something wrong to you? How do you respond to them? They should own up. They should apologize. They should this. They should that. We have all these issues with that person. Until they apologize, how do I even live with them? How do I continue? How do I deal with them? It's ridiculous how they treated me. How do I even move forward? So most people's, again, their initial reaction, you got to criticize, you got to tell them it was wrong what you did, and how dare you speaking like this, and I don't appreciate this, and I had enough already. But that's obviously the wrong way, and you get nowhere with that. So let's leave it on the side. But how do I move forward? He or she didn't apologize yet. So what am I supposed to do? So the first thing, when we calm down, we have to calm down a little bit and relax. But once we do that, the first thing is to try to think, what do I love about that person? What are the good attributes? Why did I enter into a relationship with that person? And try to focus on all that good and say, oh, all that good, that's their essence. Yes, they made me feel bad right now. They spoke in a way that is inappropriate, or they didn't give me the time that I needed, or they bought me the wrong present, or this, or whatever it is. But those aren't who they are. Those are mistakes that they made, and we're gonna have to figure out a way to address those mistakes. But it's not defining the person. And therefore, when you're able to look at that and two separate compartments, who they are and what they did, it's much easier to then go ahead and relate to them and still be happy around them and maybe still be even loving to them and still want to build that relationship with them. And then you can move forward to how to deal with that, which we'll talk about another time. But the first step is to recognize, and this takes a lot of work, a lot of thinking about who they are, what makes them special to us, why we care about them, what do we learn from them, what have they given to us, what do we gain from them, why do we indebted it to them? All of the good, the essence of who they are. We have to separate the essence versus their actions. Once we're able to do that, we're able to influence. Because we believe in the people, they'll trust us, and we'll be able to go ahead and move them forward. Okay. Before I have one more idea. Yeah, question. Okay. Yes.
Now, in the perfect world, everything you're saying is great, you know. But we're sitting over here, you know, thinking like, you don't see any of the good in the person when they make you upset and angry. They've gotten to your core. There's no way that I'm gonna think, oh, they're so nice, but they really hurt me. But their essence is nice. I'm thinking they're a piece of garbage. I never want to talk to them again. I don't want them in my life. Why did I ever take them into my life? I mean, I'm telling you, you know, I'm sorry, I'm being honest. It feels really bad because I'm telling you exactly how I feel. You know, so how do you go to this like great place that you're at and think, oh, you know, they're really such a good person. This is so unusual that they're. Am I the only one that feels that way?
Yeah, thanks for being brave and safe for all of us.
Yeah, I was gonna say, as everyone was just nodding their heads, I was like, no way they believe what I'm saying.
It's very hard. It's a very hard thing to do because you feel like hurt, undeserving, you know, of their harming you.
Right. Okay. So, there's already bridging into the next topic. So but we'll go there a little bit. There are two answers to that question. One, you don't wake up after the person made you feel like garbage and start to say, why do I like that person again? Start to make my list. It doesn't go like that. And actually, you'll never have the headspace to be able to do that. This is something that what we could work on when there's nothing wrong. Okay? Because there's nothing. There is no relationship that anyone is in, and I don't care who tells me that it exists. I don't believe it for a second. That everyone hold, except for with my marriage, of course, that there's no case that you could go ahead and say, oh, my wife, my husband, my friend, this is perfect. Ain means no. There's no chance. It doesn't exist. You know why? Because we are human. And like we said last time, if you never disagree, and that means you just don't have a relationship. That means you actually don't talk to each other enough to know that this person is not on the same page as you. It's impossible. We're different. We're different experiences. We grew up differently. It's impossible. And therefore, this isn't something that we start working on when I'm upset with someone. When I am in a relationship, it's not just because it feels good. Sometimes, unfortunately, people enter relationships because of that. So that's a nice thing in the beginning. But then you got to make lists. You got to really think, why do I like this person? How do I connect with this person? What are the values? What do they represent? That can happen before anything bad ever happens. And the more we start to look at that, the more when something does come up, it still won't be easy because we're going to be in emotional mode, which I'll talk about in a minute. But it's easier to go ahead and snap and start to say, okay, let me start using my intellect for a minute. Okay? But even if you're able to get out of the emotions and speak with your intellect, if your intellect has nothing to say, it's not going to work. And therefore, this is something that exists always. When I lecture on this topic, I tell my students, find a friend right now and start to focus only on their good. It's very important. People. I'll tell you another story about one of my daughters. My daughter, when she was in first grade, a different daughter. So my oldest daughter. So she came home, and my mother was visiting, and my mother asked my daughter, do they say Tehillim, prayers for sick people in their school? So she said they say Tehillim, but not for sick people. So my mother said, well, then why do you say Tehillim? He said, we say Tehillim so people don't get sick. So that was whoa. You know, sometimes we're so, when things are wrong and there's a bad thing, we snap into, let's go. But when things are good, we don't focus on the good. We don't recognize all the blessings in our life. If we would constantly remember what is so good in our lives and why we like people and why we appreciate people, then if something would come about that would steer us off, we'd be able to, we have a tremendous foundation. We're saturated with all that information, that love, that care, that understanding of the other person, that it's much easier for whatever hits us to bounce off. Okay, so the same thing over here. When we're in relationships, we always want to be focusing on why we're invested in this relationship. Why do we like this person? Why do we care about this person? What does this person teach us? What does this person give us that allows us to grow? That's key. And we should be able to snap it like this. No Hallmark greetings, like you're the best, you're amazing, you're the smartest. None of that stuff. That's baloney. Okay, I'm talking about the real things, right? You make me feel so good when you say this, when you speak to your parent like that. I learned so very, very specific types of things that we could go ahead and learn from, that when something goes wrong, we're able to see, yeah, okay, but that's small. Okay, that's part one. Again, that you have to really allow these things to happen way before these events occur. Two, we have to realize that we're emotional human beings. And all of us are. Some of us are more emotional than others, but we all have emotions. God gave it to us. Emotions are good things. We're supposed to have it. We shouldn't put it down. Okay? When we get hurt by anyone, so we have those feelings that Dr. Fay so beautifully expressed before. Okay? It can be intense. And we hate the person, and we just want them to get out of here, and just I don't want to talk to them, and everything. We have to realize that a lot of that is based on our emotion. And often, if you go to sleep in the morning, you'll feel a little better, and you'll be able to think more clearly. The problem is that we all go into, many of us go into the mode that we have to take care of this right now. And take care of this right now means that we're about to enter a world war, and we're never going to get out of this one, because it's going to go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. So it's not constructive in any shape or form to deal with something when you're emotional. Because you're not going to get anywhere from it. It's going to be very hard for you to express yourself. It'll be very, very hard for you to think straight. And if something happened that really gets you upset, take a breather. Your breather might be a few days. Okay, your breather might be even longer than a few days sometimes. But you have to realize that, yes, I'm going to deal with this, but I can't deal with it in this state right now. And any parent knows that with a child. If you discipline a child when you're emotional and when you're angry, they get nothing out of it except they see your anger. That's it. So anything that you say is not going to get them further. It's going to push them further away. But it's not just with kids. It's with a spouse. It's with a friend. It's with everyone. When people are emotional and talk to you while they're in their emotion, it's very hard for us to relate, to get defensive. We start going back. We're being all emotional about this. You're not being sensible. I've never heard of any conversation that ever worked out when those two things came together. And therefore, it's very important for us to realize this. This is hard, but there's no excuse to respond. Person say, okay, I'm feeling emotional right now. I'm hurt. I need to take some time, and it's okay. You don't have to resolve the whole thing right now. I'm going to say something that I think is like, some people would tell me I'm absolutely crazy, but I'm going to be honest. I'm an honest guy. People have this idea that like you can't go to sleep at night until you resolve every single thing with whoever you're in altercation with. I think that's totally untrue. And I think that people who do that force conversations that are not able to be had, and it ends up being much, much, much worse. The worst conversation you could have is at 3 o'clock in the morning when two people are tired. It just doesn't go. So we have to grow up, and we have to be mature, and we have to realize, I was just hurt by that. I'd rather not talk about this right now. Let's talk about this tomorrow. I need a couple days. I still love you. I still care about you. I still, I'm not in a good spot right now. I need to go ahead and take some time. And I hope the other person in the relationship is going to respect that. Yes, it takes two to tango over there, but that's important. You don't have to resolve everything right away. You have to resolve everything in the most productive and constructive way. No one said right now. Don't do it. You got to feel, you got to know when you're ready. You're going to realize sometimes Maybe the next day or two, you're going to realize that, maybe the person was right and I didn't do anything wrong. I'm sorry, and I was the one that was wrong. Or maybe the fact that they drove into the tree with the car was a total accident. It's never going to happen again, and I don't have to deal with it now. I don't have to talk to him about driving. It was a pure mistake. It will never, ever happen again, right? But we're not in that headspace immediately. We're emotional. And therefore, we have to try to detach ourselves from that emotional state. We're allowed to sit in the emotions for a while. It's okay. You're not going to get anywhere from it, but it's okay because we're human. But don't act as much as you can. Act based on that. Attack and try to resolve and it's not going to be successful. So I think those two things. One is always working already now when things are good, working on appreciating and articulating what the positive is in that other person, even though, of course, not everything's perfect, but that's not who they are. You work on that before issues come about. And two, being able to disconnect our emotional feelings regarding what happened. Then it's okay right now I feel like they're trash. Right now I'm upset that I ever entered really, I got that. But that's not how you're supposed to now respond. You have to wait for that to die down a little bit. And then, please God, next time we'll talk about how to then go ahead and speak it out. What steps have to occur in order for it to be productive and constructive so that both of you feel at the end of the day that we could continue to grow together. I'm not saying that if you could go to sleep not angry at a person, that's not ideal. I'm just saying if you can't, you don't have to kill yourself to go ahead and say, well, now let's have a conversation at 12 o'clock at night until 3:30 until we resolve this, till we both fall asleep on each other and realize that we couldn't do anything anyway. And then the next day we're just grumpy and tired also. Like you have to be sensible. So if you're really not in a good mood and you're tired, and it's very hard to have real conversations when you're emotional and tired. That's the reality. And we have to be aware of that. Then you wait a little bit. You know what I'm saying? But of course, if you could go ahead and say Shema, beautiful what you just said. I'm saying I'm not on that level. So it's not as easy. I wish I could.
Your soul is supposed to come up and rectify.
You're right in that you're right. You're right in the ideal state. I'm just speaking practically. If you can't do it, I mean practical. If you can't do it, no, you're right. You're right. That's the correct level. If you could do it in 5 minutes, you should be able to do it. But if one of the two people can't do it because they're too emotional or too tired, it's not the right time to start to work heavy stuff out. It doesn't go like that. Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Guys.